Hello everyone. Oh darn, I cut my own head off. How's that for a graceful entrance on this Thursday evening? Hang tight with me, guys. I'm trying so hard to make sure you guys can see my machine, but I'm struggling. Okay, there we go. I have a head and we have a machine. Hello everyone, welcome back to String and Story. My name is HollyAnne and it's my job to guide you to quilt and to live with confidence. Y'all, I'm excited because we are talking about tackling large quilts on our domestic machine this evening. And while I am jumping on and y'all are jumping on, I actually need to wind a bobbin. So we're gonna do that real quick and get this different color threaded into my machine. And then we're gonna get going in earnest. Now, first of all, welcome to the second week of summer stash busting. It's our first week of real summer stash busting content. This is my first whip, guys. I'm committed to having this puppy done in 9 days, and I have a small panic attack going on inside my head about that at the moment, because quite frankly, I'm not sure what I was thinking, except that it really does need to get done. And it's a great opportunity to cover a couple of techniques with you guys. So here tonight, I am mostly going to be giving you guys kind of a wide angle how I'm going to wrestle a quilt this big on my machine and give you some tips on how you can wrestle a quilt this big on your machine, because I recognize, I think it's really important for me to say out loud, I recognize that I now have a much larger throat space than many of you guys do at home, and we're going to talk about this. Because I quilted the center of this quilt, which if you're familiar with domestic machine quilting, I quilted the center of this quilt, which is the hardest part. If you're familiar, you'll know that, on a much, much smaller machine. And so I have some important takeaways to share with you guys from that. If I can get my bobbin going here. All right. Oh. Let me get this rolling. And then while this is winding, I'm gonna greet y'all. All right, who is here with me? Oh man, I haven't even pulled up my video yet. That is not the right video. Hang tight. Hold please. Let me unpin this so that other people don't have the same challenge. I have more songs stuck in my head tonight, guys, so I'm gonna be singing. And I think the kids are finally settling. Praise the good Lord. This is like so quiet tonight. Oh, I bet it's because I took, no? I don't know. It just feels really, oh, it's because it's in free motion quilting mode, so it's winding slower. I'm like, why is it so quiet? But I have it in free motion mode, which means I have throttled my speed. Oh, come on, computer, don't fail me now. Because y'all, I cannot see your comments if this doesn't load. Because I can't read them from this far away. I see y'all over there. Here we go. Come on, Facebook. Okay, so while this is loading, I'll greet you guys momentarily. First of all, thank you for all of you who have registered for our official finish along for summer stash busting this year. If you're jumping on tonight and you were not here last week for the kickoff of summer stash busting, give me a hot second to catch you up, okay? Last year, 2018 summer stash busting was all about literally our stashes and our fabric and making sure that we took some time to focus on using what we already have, right? And we talked about different types of quick quilts that you can put together and how to use your scraps and how to organize and when you should actually destash. And it was wonderful. But what I found is that after doing all of that, I had a lot more tops that weren't done. And I know that this is not an uncommon problem, that we get our tops made, maybe even get our quilts sandwiched, or maybe we get our quilts cut out, but we don't quite get them to the top stage, right? But somewhere along that spectrum between picking our fabric and pattern and snuggling on the couch, something breaks down and the quilt doesn't get completed, right? So this summer we are doing a finish along. It's an 8-week finish along that has already started. Our first whip of 4, whip is work in progress, or you might say PhD, project's half done, is due a week from Saturday. And so we are conquering either 4 whips or 4 stages of a single whip or some blend of the two, right? I encourage you to look around your sewing room and choose the low-hanging fruit, right? What are the things that you're gonna have the most success finishing up over the next 8 weeks, right? And commit to working on them. We have deadlines. And for those of you who like deadlines and who like prizes and who like a little kick in the pants, we have an official finish along that you can register for on my website. This includes 4 commemorative quilt labels and that little extra accountability, as well as eligibility for prizes for finishing your whips on time. We have sponsors like Hobbs Batting, Make Modern Magazine, Aurifil Thread, and Paintbrush Studio Fabrics joining us, as well as a grand prize sponsored by yours truly. I'm really excited about it. And a lot of y'all have joined me already, and I'm in the process, for those of you who have already registered, I'm in the process of compiling all of your commitments into a spreadsheet that I'm going to share in the Quilting Rockstars Facebook group so that you have them for easy reference, I have them for easy reference, and we can all hold each other accountable and cheer for each other. And I'm hoping for some of you that have been kind of on the fence, that scrolling through that document in the next day or two will encourage you to join us. You'll see the other kinds of commitments that other quilters are making. Some quilters are taking 1 quilt and breaking it into 4 stages. Some quilters are finishing 4 quilts. A lot of people are doing a mix of both. And I think it's going to be a really fun season together of this sense of accomplishment, right? Okay, so that will be coming. A whip tracker will also be coming. Y'all, I wildly underestimated how crazy this week would be. That's all. I mean, isn't that my life every week? I feel like that's my life every week. And there was something else for you guys that I was going to share. Oh, registration for the finish along will close on Monday. So what is that, 4 days from now? I don't even know what day of the week, or what, is that the 6th? Yes, it is the 6th. So registration will close on Monday the 6th. So you have through this weekend to register, okay? All right, let me see who's here with me, because good heavens, I let the comments pile up. Hello, Sue. Hello, Lydia. Hey, Lori. Hey, Sandy. Hey, Mary. Hey, Julia. Hey, Deborah. Hey, Dana Lou. Finally back to your summer place. That's so exciting, Deborah. Hey, Charlotte. Hey, Robin. Hey, Debbie. Hey, Tina. Hey, Cheryl. Hey, Deanna. Ooh, hand quilting while watching. You finished the quilting on your first whip. That's so exciting, Lydia. You are so far ahead of me. Hey, Lori. Hey, Robin. Best tip is to stop in the needle down position. Amen. Yes, yes, yes. Excellent, excellent. Hey, Pauline. Hey, Jenny. Hey, Christine. It's okay. I was here almost on time too, babe. No worries. Hey, Kathy. Hey, Angela. Don't quit trying until you get used to moving your quilt around. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I love that, Donna. Hey, Gay. Hey, Linda. Wrestling with the quilt is the biggest challenge. Yes, yes, yes. Tina, you've got this. You're going to be a rock star. Hey, Joe. Listening between. Oh, I love that so much, Joe. You dislike quilting something larger than a twin on your domestic. Stuff and fluff. Twin double is your sweet spot. You know, that's about my sweet spot on a domestic with a smaller throat space as well. And I'm going to talk about this throat space here in a minute, because I know that that is a bit of an elephant in the room. Hey, Laura, congrats on your new baby. Hey, Sandra. Hey, Maggie. Hey, Debbie. Hey, Angel. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Ramona. Woo! I caught up for a brief second. All right, let me get this bobbin in my machine. I'm going to grab a quilting sandwich from somewhere. Not from here. I thought I had one over here. I'm going to have to grab another one, guys. We're going to test our tension, and then we're going to get going in earnest, okay? Now, some of you have already spotted that there is a question of the week. So if you have not yet answered that, do please answer that. If you answer that question before next Wednesday, you'll be entered to win a copy of my perfect fit pattern. Oh, hang tight. My kids are not quite asleep, and Hubster had to leave, so he's off doing his own side hustling. So I have to keep a bit of an ear out, and I'm sure they can hear me, which is probably not helping the whole sleep thing. Let's see, so do answer the question of the week. Be entered to win a copy of my perfect fit pattern, which I think is a fun one. It's a good strip stash buster. And especially if you've got graduates, college-bound kiddos, it's a great one to do in school colors, which makes it a great gift. All right. Come on. Also, please note that there are 2 links over to my blog in today's caption. One is for today's blog post, which is all about tackling large quilts on your domestic machine. And the other is the main summer stash busting post. So if you are just tuning in and you're like, wait, I missed this summer stash busting introduction. What is this? How do I get involved? What are the details? You will find all of that in that second link over to my blog. The third link you will see in the caption of this video is to my Amazon Picks page. So that's where you're going to find links to things like thread and quilting gloves and other notions that may come up as we're chatting tonight that you may just find useful to be able to order and have them show up right at your door. Oh, bobbin down. Hang on, I'm going to get that or I'll forget that it's down there. Oh, man. And because I always drop something. Oh, while I'm up, let me grab a quilting sandwich. I might be able to find a wee bit of room on this one. Probably only a wee bit, though. All right, let's see what questions are popping up. Biggest hang up is just trying to manipulate the size. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, that's amazing, Laura. Not only is the throat space small, but your machine is a tabletop with no extension. Oh, yes, Dana Lou. We're going to talk about a few of those things. Okay, so Ramona, this throat space is like 12 inches. So it's enormous, and that's wildly different. Pardon me, guys. I think I'm going to have to use my slimline tonight, or I'm not going to be able to see. Is that... Okay, that's not too badly in y'all's eyes. Which I recognize is probably double what a lot of y'all are working with. Now, I was working on a domestic machine with a 5.5 inch throat space until just a couple of months ago. So I've got lots of experience in that department. Give me a hot second. Oh wow, that is truly horrifying. All right. Not presser foot. Let's try that. Oh. The only downside of using the thread trimmer, guys, is that I end up with a very short tail. And as someone who strongly prefers to pull her thread to the top before she starts sewing, that can be really, really annoying. All right. Please be good. Well, we're better, but we're not there yet. I was hoping to do this before we jumped on together, guys, but you know what? This is useful because I want you guys to see this is part of the process, right? So what I'm doing now is I'm checking my thread tension, and I quilted on this machine with these settings just a couple of weeks ago, like not very long ago at all. All right, I'm not gonna be able to pull that through. And had it all fine-tuned for quilting with 50 weight thread, right? But that was then and this is now. Therefore, I must check my thread tension again. And I think we've got it. Excellent, okay. So I want you guys to always do that, especially if you're changing bobbins, anything like that. Take that moment to check your thread tension, okay? All right, let's see. Biggest hang-ups. Oh, Jody, I've got you, girl. You can do this. Make a plan first. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hello, Bryce. Figuring out where and how to do. Does not sit down at a table or your machine. Oh, yes. Okay. So let's jump in to some basic tips around free motion quilting on your domestic machine. Now, first things first. I have a very large throat space on this machine, right? That does make it easier, okay? But I have quilted up to double-size quilts. In fact, I started this quilt, which you can get a vague idea of how big it is. This is a double-sized quilt. This will go on my guest bed when it's done. And I started in the center on this quilt, which was particularly easy because it was a medallion quilt, right? But remember, when you're quilting on the domestic, the center of the quilt is the hardest part, right? That's when you've got the most bulk underneath your machine. I'm like way out here now, right? Like I've already covered a lot of the difficult part of this quilt. And I did that on a machine with a 5.5 inch throat space that did not sit down in my table. Okay, that was back when I was sewing on the Sparrow 30. Remember when I had that machine for a couple of months? Ultimately decided that it was not the best machine for me. It was not powerful enough or big enough for someone who quilts as much as I do. I think it would be really well suited to either learning or garment sewing, but it just didn't meet my needs, right? Great little machine nonetheless. But I want you to know that I worked on that machine, and there's a picture of that machine in tonight's blog post, because that's a whole different animal than what I'm quilting on now, right? And I know that that is a lot closer to what a lot of y'all are working on at home. My Singer that I also quilted on for several years, again, 5.5-inch throat space. Now, I did eventually have a table where that sat down, and I actually linked up to that table. It's called the Gidget from Arrow Sewing Cabinets in today's post. It's a great, affordable, and portable option if you're really wanting to start quilting more of your own quilts, but you feel very hampered by not being able to drop your machine down into a table, right? Has a universal cutout that works great for nearly all machines. You literally can fold it up and tuck it in a corner and just pull it out when you need it, and it's fabulous, okay? Because some of the things that are gonna make it easier to free motion quilt on your domestic, right? The first and most important thing when you're free motion quilting on your domestic is being willing to slow down, okay? Y'all have seen me on the long arm. The long arm moves fast, right? Y'all watched that night when I was quilting a t-shirt quilt. Sorry, I'm listening to my kid for a second. Y'all watched that night when I was quilting a t-shirt quilt and did that loopy meander and did the whole quilt in like 30 minutes, right? Even doing a loopy meander on a quilt on your domestic, you're not going to be able to move that fast, okay? You have less control in terms of, like, you have a smaller area in which you have control, right? And you have to stop and manipulate your quilt often, all right? So first of all, go into this willing to be patient, okay? It's worth it. The amount of detail that you can achieve on your domestic machine makes it 100% worth it. Now, in terms of setup, right? I keep my supplies very simple. I have my quilting gloves and my machine and my thread. That really is about it. I do also love my Slimline light. I actually didn't list this in the blog, and I totally should have, because y'all know how much I love my light, which I'm actually gonna turn off for a hot second because it's super bright and I can't see you guys. All right, so I keep my supplies simple. I don't currently use a Supreme slider. When I was working on a smaller machine, I didn't even drop the feed dogs. I felt like my tension was better when my feed dogs were engaged, and it was totally fine, guys. I do drop the feed dogs on this machine because it automatically does so when I click the free motion quilting setting. Okay, if that had not been pre-programmed, I probably wouldn't, right? Like, I have no problem with my feed dogs being up, and I love that it gives good, crisp tension, okay? Now, as far as where your body is positioned, I talk about this a little bit at both the beginning and the end of tonight's blog post. The first thing is you're probably gonna need your chair to be all the way up, especially if your machine does not sit down into the table, guys, okay? I think one of my kids is still awake. It's gonna be all right. So I have my table and my machine bed at belly button height, which y'all can y'all see that at all? Here we go. Okay, so here's my belly button. So belly button height. Right now, this is harder if your machine is sitting on top of a table, right? Because if I had a machine that was sitting several inches up, my chair would need to be several more inches up. Now, in terms of my leg length, that would be fine. I would still be able to reach my pedal, but my chair doesn't go any higher. Okay, so that may be a little bit of something you have to navigate, either finding a chair that'll go a little bit higher, considering like sitting on a book. Like, get creative, but just know if you can't get your machine bed at that belly button level, you're gonna have to be extra conscious of what's going on with your shoulders and your arms. Your goal by putting the table and the bed of the machine at that height is that your arms form a gentle 90-degree angle. You don't want them at less than a 90-degree angle, right? No dinosaur arms. Rawr. Okay, we want nice relaxed arms instead of quilting like this. That's one of the biggest risks if you're quilting at your dining room table, for example. Your dining room table is probably a lot higher than like a sewing table is, right? Because you're trying to get food to mouth without making a mess, right? But then you add a machine on top of that and a quilting table on top of that, and all of a sudden you're quilting like this. And that's gonna hurt a lot faster. Okay, and you're gonna have to be extra conscious of what's going on with your body and making sure that you stretch yourself out. All right, so first of all, make sure that your table is as close to that belly button height as possible. Second of all, having room behind your machine and to the left of your machine. This is where y'all can see this, right? I've got this big giant quilt sitting on that table behind my machine. right? The two things that can happen if you don't have sufficient support for your machine is, one, you're gonna hurt your body, just constantly trying to wrestle that giant heavy quilt around, right? Two, you could break a needle. If your quilt is dropping off the edge of an abyss right behind your machine, the weight of that, remember gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared, guys. That's a lot of force tugging on your quilt. And if that's tugging on your quilt and you're trying to manipulate it, you're gonna break a needle. Okay, so even if you just stick a chair back there so it's not falling all the way to the ground, that will help, okay? Now, I know you can buy contraptions where you like drape it up and all this stuff. I've never used one. My general impression is that it's probably more trouble than it's worth. I would rather drag a card table in and prop my quilt on that, okay? Now, I'm gonna pause for just a second because I see y'all chatting and I wanna make sure that I don't miss anything. All right. You did a king with an 8-inch throat. Not easy, but it works. Yeah, Lisa. It's a virtual high five. That is awesome. I remember you working on that machine. Let's see. Machine was sitting on top, used TV tables. Yes, yes, yes. I love it. This is a Daylight Slimline. You will find a link to this on the Amazon Picks page. So even though I need to go add it into the blog post, which I will probably do when we're done here tonight, you'll find a link on the Amazon Picks page. It is amazing. 20-year lifetime on it. That's how long the bulb will last. Very bright, see? Very bright daylight accurate light. So this is a great light for being able to see colors and contrast, especially if you don't have a whole lot of good light in your sewing space. You can see I can manipulate it down, which I will do when I'm quilting in a few minutes. I can also swing it up out of my way. And it does not get hot. That's my favorite thing, because it looks like it would turn into a curling iron in terms of that light, like heating it up, but it doesn't. And trust me, I bumped my face on it plenty of times, so I would know. I love, love, love this light. Like, honestly, I'm not sure how I functioned before I had it. All right. Quilting your Janome, decent throat space. Yeah, I'm over the moon for my Juki too. You dread slowing down, Lydia. I know, me too. Okay, yes. It is mirror image because I'm using the selfie camera. So that way I can see what y'all are seeing to some extent. I know that that's a little bit disorienting. Someday I will work up the guts to flip my phone around and then we'll all be super confused. Biggest bugbear at the moment is that your machine sits on your table. Yes, it is harder to move if your machine sits up. Now, if you can get a quilting table for your machine, that will help a lot. But you are going to find a little bit of that getting stuck. Now, as we continue talking tonight, I'm going to talk about exactly the limited area you have control over when you're free motion quilting on the domestic. You may find that you also just need to be actually stopping and moving the quilt more often, which is a bit of a pain, but it'll help alleviate that drag issue because you literally can lift the quilt up and reposition it. Let's see. When you leave the feed dogs up, do you adjust the foot? My machine did not have a foot adjustment. My last machine, the Singer Quantum Stylus. So no, I did not. But I used a hopping foot, which leaves a lot more space in between the foot and the quilt anyway. So I didn't have a big issue. Lydia, I'm so proud of you. You're getting so close to that. Ah, I love it. See on another side, people buy the thickest foam insulation that will fit the height of the top of the sewing machine. Cut out the machine. Wow, that sounds like a lot of work, Rhoda. But very interesting idea. Yes, put something back there to catch it. Yes, yes, yes. Yay! All right. So there's your basic setup. Now, posture. We talked a little bit about belly button height already. I know that the last couple of times we've talked about posture, I've been over at the long arm. So I made sure that today's blog post includes a picture from over here of me sitting at the machine so you can see how I arrange my body, right? Now you'll get a pretty good idea if I'm just like this. You see how my abs are engaged? My back is flat. I keep this pillow behind me so that it's a lot harder to slouch, right? Like this is how we often sit in chairs. And there are not words for how bad this is for our bodies, right? Like I'm literally sitting on the end of my spinal column right now. which is basically like pinching my own nerves, right? So you want to sit up over your sit bones, right? So remember, your pelvis, you've got the big wings on your pelvis. That's when you put your hands on your hips, that's what you're feeling. But then you have those smaller wings down underneath, and the very bottoms of that, and if you literally just like grab the underside of your own butt, you will feel those bony protuberances. I'm gonna call them your sit bones. Sorry, Doc, I'm currently forgetting the official name of these bones, right? But your sit bones, you wanna sit on the bottom of those smaller wings. That's gonna put you up over your pelvis. It's gonna make your back long and straight, and it's gonna force you to engage your abdominal muscles, okay? Now, the way that my chair is currently arranged, it just so happens that having belly button height with my table and also feet flat on the floor. So I have 90-degree angles at my knees and 90-degree angles at my arms, okay? My shoulders are relaxed and down, and I'm gonna allow myself a gentle tilt of the head. I'm not here. Again, super bad for your neck, right? But a gentle tilt of my head, and I'm gonna use my eyeballs to do a lot of the work of my quilting, right? Now remember, when we're quilting on our domestic, we only have control of this area right in between our hands, right? So what that also means, if you remember our spatial awareness conversation from a few weeks ago, which is linked up in the blog, that I really only need to know what's going on inside that triangle at any given time, right? So before I start quilting, if I need to lean around and get an idea of what's going on, that's the time to do it, right? When I'm not actually wrestling with the quilt itself. So while my arms are able to relax, take a look, see what's going on, and then you've got your bearings and you can quilt. Okay, this takes practice, guys, because our inclination when we're free motion quilting is to do it like this, right? Because we want to make sure we know where that needle is in relation to our fingers at all times. And we also want to make sure that we know what we're doing. But you know what? This will kill you, okay? Like, I know that sounds super dramatic, but it's so bad for your body on so many levels, okay? So before we get going, we have wound our bobbin, threaded our machine, tested our tension, and now I'm gonna weave this big old guy up underneath here, and we're gonna actually get going. I'm hoping before this quilt is done that we will do a little bit of close-up quilting together, but I don't think tonight is gonna be the night for that, my dears. I was thinking about having a secondary tripod set up, and I realized I just had so many big picture things that I wanted to share with you guys that I don't think we're gonna try to do a close-up on top of that, all right? So I'm currently, because I have a presser foot control in my foot pedal, raising up my foot so I can get my machine under here, right? And I'm gonna bring up that bottom thread. Now I am doing, if you remember from last summer, which here's another thing I probably should add for you guys, this is the Camp Oda May Choose Your Own Adventure Quilt Along from Motivate Shop last summer. So I quilted or pieced this during summer stash busting last year, okay? And then I did a blog series talking about all the different ways you can quilt these blocks based on your skill level, right? So I'm doing some continuous curve quilting inside these granny squares, which hopefully you guys can see the granny squares. And there's a couple of things that are gonna go on here. All right, just, thank you, Ichiel Tuberosities. I am so impressed, Lori. Why do you know that? Are you a nurse? I don't remember. Remind me. I'm like super impressed because I know that you're right because my chiropractor taught me this and I just blanked. All right. Bye, Joe. I'll see you soon. It's quilted for your first time ever on your domestic, doing it on a large table. Yes, yes, yes. I love this quilt too, Christine. I do. Okay, so imagine with me for a second a couple of things, all right? You notice even with this big old table, I'm fluffing everything up. Because right now, the luxury of this machine, right, is that I have lots of room, so I can move around a lot. But in reality, if you're quilting this on your home machine, it is probably more like this, okay? And you're gonna bunch all this up so that you have this teeny tiny little flat space here, okay? That's enough, all right? That's enough room to put your hand in. Your hand is gonna act as a barrier between the bulk of the quilt and your quilting area. And you're gonna deal with what's right in between your fingers. And so in my case, I'm going across and back and forth these little, I just said the name of this block and now I'm blanking. Anyway, I'm gonna go back and forth across my block. And so I will scooch just a little bit to be able to deal with this and scooch back and forth. And if this were all bunched up like this, I would probably have to do a couple swoops of my continuous granny squares. I knew it would come to me. I'd probably have to do a couple of continuous curves on this granny square and then pause and scooch a little, but that's okay, because remember, we're gonna be patient, okay? I promise that that's enough room, all right, to do this. You just have to be willing to push and shove. Now, a couple of things about that. Some people recommend, you know, rolling up your quilt because it makes it tighter. Y'all, I highly recommend rolling fabric if you are packing for a long trip and a small luggage. If you have too many t-shirts to fit in your t-shirt drawer. If you are packing up cute little onesies to put in your diaper bag. But when you are quilting, please don't roll your quilt. I've done this. There are still a couple of situations in which I will, primarily if I'm straight line quilting and I literally am like rolling it up to just unroll it this direction. But y'all, it makes it more of a pain in the butt to have to stop and rearrange your quilt, because then you have to unroll and re-roll every time, okay? I don't know how many of you guys watch Brian Regan, but he has this bit about getting on the airplane, you know, and the flight attendant goes, okay, everybody, we are now boarding Section A. Please, Section A, proceed to the gate area. No, please, only Section A, right? But really, when we hear the flight attendant say, we're gonna now begin boarding, we all just jump up and mob, right? Like that's our instinct, regardless of whether or not we're Section A. That's what you're gonna do with this quilt, right? It's just gonna mob, right? And you know, then the bit goes on, push and shove, everybody, push and shove. That's what we're doing with this quilt. We're gonna just push and shove. The reason for that is, in addition to the fact that it's a lot easier to manipulate than a big dense log of fabric, is that you actually can get this. So your inclination is, if you have a smaller throat space, right, is that really everything has to just be crammed up under there. But in reality, think about, you know, like a magician when they're doing that scarf trick, right, that they just pull the scarves out of their hands. Think about how the way that they can pull from the middle and move a lot of the bulk of that scarf out of their hand before it's actually released, okay? And I know that's a stretch of an analogy, but picture that pulling motion with me, right? Because often you can accomplish the same thing with your quilt, that you actually can do some fiddling and some manipulating and coax a lot of the bulk out from under your harp space and to right behind your machine. Takes a little fiddling, a little bit of coaxing, but you can free up more space under there than it initially appears, right? With just some strategic pushing and shoving, all right? Then, whenever possible, I move around my quilt in two ways, all right? I'm just like fire hosing. Granny Square, I love you guys for just yelling at me. Thank you. You're a retired nurse, Lori. I'm so impressed that that is still in your brain. Bye, Sandra. See you soon. I do use a thinner batting. This is actually an 80-20, which I have mixed emotions about, but I wanted a black batting for this because of all the navy that's on it. A thicker batting, remember that a lot of the bulk of what's going on in there, Dana Lou, is air. So continue pushing and shoving. And if you're still finding that frustrating, consider switching to a thinner batting. I really do recommend it. I find that a high quality cotton or cotton wool blend, even though it doesn't have a lot of loft, does provide a lot of weight and warmth, and I really like it. But that's also a personal thing. I know some people really prefer the floof in their quilt, and that's totally cool too, okay? All right, so two things when we're moving around this quilt, right? I love wool batting. I just finished using a cotton wool blend from Hobbs for the quilt for our bed. Oh, it's so good. It is so good. And wool's a great way to get a little bit more loft without a lot more bulk as well. Now I try to move from the center of my quilt out. There are two magic things about doing that. One, the center of your quilt is the most frustrating part to quilt on your domestic, right? That's when you've got the most bulk hanging out underneath your machine. The second thing is that when you're quilting on your machine, there is some element of, on your domestic, there's some element of shift that's gonna happen, right? You can get a little bit of shift on the long arm, but I feel like it's less. On your domestic, as we all know, it can be a struggle to really get a nice tight base. I do recommend homemade spray base though. I'm a huge fan. I'm also totally biased, you know, because it's what I've been using for forever. But you're gonna get a little bit of shift, and working from the center out in all directions will keep that shift even, right? So you're less likely to end up with a cattywampus quilt, okay? So you get the worst part over with and your shift is even, right? As your seams flatten out, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I know that that's not always practical, okay? So if that's not practical because of the design you're wanting to quilt on your quilt, Sometimes with doing an all over motif that just really doesn't make sense. Like mentally it feels very like, why am I starting in the middle and then I have to figure out how to spiral out, right? Now this was a medallion quilt, so it lent itself really well to doing it that way. But if you are not going to start from the center out, if the way that you're wanting to quilt your quilt, it makes sense to do things a little bit differently, do consider doing some stitch in the ditch along your block seam lines, or you know, wherever on your quilt it makes sense to have a little bit of ditch stitching, and just get everything secured down so you don't have to worry too much about that shift, okay? The second thing I try to do is I always try to keep my quilt moving away from me. Again, this doesn't always work, but I attempt it. And the reason for that is because if you put a table or a chair or an exceptionally willing human being who's going to catch your quilt, let me know if you have one of those, because that would be super cool. You know, just kind of, you know, like when we wind yarn, you've got the person who just is very patient to sit there like this. Maybe you have a human who just sits there like this. But whatever's going to support your quilt behind your machine, you want the weight of the quilt going towards that, right? So that your body is holding less and less weight. All right. Now, use the edge of your table. Use your body to hold this as much as possible, but try not to use your shoulders. I've made the mistake in the past, you know, of like throwing the quilt up over one shoulder, especially if I've done like the quilt log thing. But you need your shoulders and your arms free, right? This is a great opportunity to just like use your torso to kind of brace everything in place. Right now, I don't have a whole lot sitting here, so it's kind of going down in my lap, but I don't want it to get caught up under the table or anything like that, right? It depends on the wool, Sarah. So I like the cotton wool blend from Hobbs because you can machine wash it. Now, wool, it only felts under two conditions. It needs to have water and it needs to have heat, right? So, and friction, three conditions: water, friction, heat. So a gentle, like think like lingerie, gentle, hand wash, gentle cycle in your machine on cold, with a light tumble followed by hanging to dry. You're probably gonna have pretty good results. I recommend testing it before you do that on like a bed-size quilt, because heaven forbid something go wrong. But I found with the cotton wool blend that I really can just, I wash it on cold, like tumble dry, medium, medium high, and I haven't had any issues with it, right? So that there's enough cotton fiber in there to counteract some of that felting tendency that wool's gonna have, right? Things like a super wash wool that on their own are more washable, I'm always a bit reticent about, because they make that wool super wash by coating it in plastic. And my whole desire behind using cotton and wool is that I want to have natural fibers inside my quilt and not synthetic. So there's a couple of different ways to get the washable fibers. Personally, the cotton wool blend is like totally my jam. It's got a little bit more loft than just a cotton. The like natural temperature control factor is really lovely. It's a great batting. Great batting. All right, let's actually quilt. Now, when you're working, of course, you're going to keep in mind this fire hose of information that I have that I've shared tonight, right? But I also want you to remember to take breaks, to take care of your body. Quilting is a full body sport, okay? And we don't often treat it that way. But when I got really serious about quilting on my domestic, I just ran into a problem I was not expecting, and that is that I may need to adjust my presser foot height. Yeah. I wonder if I can do that without having to. Nope. Okay. Well, that was short-lived. Where's mine? I have bulkier seams on this than I did on my last project, and I was not anticipating. Where's my seam ripper? I feel like a meerkat, but I'm looking around for my seam ripper. Hang tight. Ah, there it is. Okay. I was not anticipating bumping into those seams so soon. So, remember that quilting is a full body sport. And so, when I first got really serious about my quilting, my chiropractor actually asked me one day, he was like, have you taken up like a full impact sport that you didn't tell me about? And I was like, no, why? And he was like, the stuff that's going on with your shoulders and elbows is kind of like impact sport level, you know, stuff. And I was like, really? That's fascinating. And basically, I had wildly underestimated the effect that quilting could have on my body. And I don't want you to make that same mistake. Oh, heavens. I'm trying to make decisions about how much I should lighten up on this. So all that to say, make sure you take breaks often. Make sure you hydrate. You know, if we're comparing this to a sport, that means you need to be drinking lots of water. Which again, not something we necessarily think about with quilting, that it's gonna be an exertion that requires hydration. But it can be, okay? You're dragging around a lot of weight. Also, after you have quilted, so you're gonna take breaks every hour or so while you're working. And after you have quilted, please take time to stretch your body out, to hydrate, to rub some deep blue on, all the good things, right? Is the Hobbs 80-20? That's fast. I don't think I knew that off the top of my head. I'm really glad that y'all did. Hey, Kimberly. All right, I'm rechecking my tension because I changed something, right? I changed my presser foot height, and that might affect my tension. I'm really hoping it doesn't, because I don't really want to fiddle with it anymore. Oh, thank heavens. Okay. Back in business, folks. Hopefully that will be high enough that I can move along without too many further issues. And again, remember, this is all part of the process, right? Like, I know it's not super glamorous for any of us involved to deal with things like presser foot height, but this is part of the journey of our quilting, right? All right, now I'm just simply gonna go at it for a minute and let you guys see. Like I said, I'm hoping that we will have some time to do some close-up quilting on this project together before I am done with it, but tonight is probably not that night. I'm just doing some continuous curves. And this thread is quite contrasting on some of the sections of this block, which is not super forgiving, right? And so what that means is I have to be forgiving of myself because it's going to be imperfect, and that's okay. I don't know how well y'all can hear, but I'm going pretty slowly. Now notice, can you see this? I'm beginning to ever so slowly cross my midline, and I need to lift this hand and move it, and so I'm actually going to come to a full stop. Let me flatten this out so you guys can see it a little bit more. Hey, Kay! Trimming these. All right. So frequent pauses and adjustments are the name of the game when you are working on a large quilt on your domestic machine, okay? Even with, now there you can see I was able to scoochy my hands a little bit. Sometimes you can get away with a little bit of a scoochy if you're going nice and slow. But other times it's going to be a lot harder. So like here, I'm actually going to come to a full stop, all right? This is not a race, all right? You don't get extra points for not stopping or anything like that, all right? I'm far more interested in you taking care of your body. Okay, now this, I'm actually doing a little feather in the center of here. And y'all, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna find it really interesting to see if I can see a difference between my quilting from last summer and the quilting that I'm doing now. Like, once I get some of it done. I'm not sure if I'll be able to. I haven't done a whole lot of work on my domestic in the meanwhile, but I can't help but be a little bit curious. Well, I can tell you my stitch in the ditch could still use more practice. Now here, I don't know how much y'all can tell, but I'm pushing it. See how wide my hands have gotten, right? I need to relax my shoulders and bring my hands back in, because when I'm doing this, you can see the difference it's making on my posture, right? And I begin to feel the tension in my neck. Now, if you find, hey Jan! Oh yes, I love that tip about slicing the fingers off the end of your gloves. I was gonna slice up a pair of mine, but I couldn't find them. I must have tossed them. Okay, so what I jumped up to grab, this is a past tense roller from doTERRA. It would also work with the deep blue rub that I referenced using as an after quilting rub, but both of these have mint oils in them. And mint oils are very cooling on the skin, so sometimes what I will do is, you can see I'm running, you know how we hold our tension like right along here? I'm running this oil down those muscles where I tend to feel that tension creep up as my posture begins to slide. And what that's going to do is it's giving just a little extra stimulation to my brain about those muscles, and it's going to give me a little cue to pay attention to if they're getting tense. Right now, the oils that are also in past tense or deep blue are also wonderful muscular support, so it's going to help you relax more. But I like that cooling sensation as a little like brain cue of like, hey, are you making sure you're not clenching up your shoulders? Yes, I want to trim these. I can't do it on these because they're knit and they will unwind, but I want to do it on some more like cottony ones that wouldn't unravel so fast. Julie, I love piecing on this machine. I love piecing on this machine. I think I piece twice as fast on this machine because it goes so fast, but it also holds a real steady line, right? Now, what you saw me doing there is I'm making sure that the edge of the quilt is over yonder. I have quilted my quilt to itself before where it's gotten folded under, so be aware of that on your domestic, okay? All right, so I've got my oils on, and I'm gonna readjust my posture and get going again here. I want to make sure my weight is staying over my sit bones, that my torso is supported by my abdominal muscles, okay? What that means is that my butt and my stomach are holding my body up, not my arms, okay? So I don't want to be like leaning over and putting a bunch of weight on my arms. They have enough to do moving this giant quilt around, okay? And yes, I just paused and rearranged for what's going to be just a very small portion of that block. Oh, I might be able to scooch back. Look at that, I was. All right, these block joins are particularly bulky. All right, and into the next block. Notice I'm keeping my head upright. I'm not leaning over. Now, this Juki has a nice little light right underneath here, but, oh, Jan, that's so cool. Which one did you get, Jan? Didn't you just get a Juki? I feel like you just posted. All right, now, if I were not on camera with you guys, I would also have this light down under here, okay? I know that's not super comfortable for y'all, so I'll leave it there for a minute, and then I'll probably put it away again because I feel like it's a pain to look at if you're on the other side of this. But that really bright light is part of my secret of being able to keep my posture, right? Some of it is habit, and habit also includes things like muscle development, because we are not always real good with these muscle groups anymore, right? We're way too accustomed to slouching. But having this bright light means that I can always see what's going on. And I don't have to squint and get way down in there. Now notice that left arm, I'm letting it get a little far out. So I'm gonna wanna creep both my hands back in here a little bit. Let's see. The 2200 QVP sit down long arm, that sounds amazing, Jan. That sounds amazing. I wonder if that's the one that I got to quilt on the day I tried this machine, because I also tried one of the sit-down long arms and really liked it, except that I didn't need a sit-down long arm because I needed a machine I could also piece on. So opposite of you, that you were like, I don't really need a machine to piece on, right? Now, remember, all of this would be the same even with a smaller throat space, right? You probably would be pausing more often, all right? But it's a matter of slow, patient movement. You can see I'm not rushing my way around this quilt. I'm taking my time. Notice also with this light, I keep it below eye level because it's so bright, right? Like I don't want it up here giving me a headache. Do this feather again. Building these habits of good posture and of patience right from the beginning are important to set yourself up for success, okay? I know they sound a little bit silly, but they will result in less pain and frustration in the long term. And they will ultimately make free motion quilting a lot easier, right? Because you're gonna learn how to move around your quilt without having your nose on the fabric, okay? And that relates to just that spatial awareness we discussed a few weeks ago, right? Oh, I need to pause because I'm a little concerned. Let me make sure I'm not having a tension issue here. Nope, I'm not. Okay. That ties into that spatial awareness we talked about a couple of weeks ago of being able to have a sense of what's going on your quilt, even when you're not looking directly at that part of it, right? Now, on something like this granny square with these continuous curves, I'm using the points of my squares as points of reference. And so I do have a pretty good idea, right, of what's going on. But for some blocks, it's a lot harder to see, right? You need to build these good habits so you can have a mind map and know where you're going. And be willing to take your time getting there if you need to, so that you don't hurt your body. The sewing machine is a lovely tool, right? We've talked a lot about sewing machines tonight and, you know, about this Juki. It's a lovely tool, but the most important tool for your free motion quilting is you. And if you can't take care of you, if you are hurting, then you're not going to be able to free motion quilt, okay? Oh, that's very cool, Angel. I haven't done quilting standing up on the domestic, but I've done piecing. But I know a few people who do, not like super personally, but I have seen that people are doing it. I highly encourage you to try it, especially if you don't have a table chair situation where you can get a good ratio, right? Now, that's going to be quite the workout, right? Because then you're also going to be balancing your body. Like, balancing in a standing position is different than balancing in a sitting position, right? So it's going to be a workout, but it would be an awesome way to overcome any kind of chair table issues where you can put your machine like on a counter and go from there. That'd be very cool. That's amazing, Tina. I'm so glad that you're seeing progress. Now, Tina, you bring up a very good point. What if you don't have a situation where your table is at this ideal height, right? And you feel a little forced into dinosaur arms. And I've quilted with dinosaur arms, right? There's a couple of things you need to know. One, you can still do it, but two, take more breaks, okay? It's gonna put particular strain on your elbows. I tend to drive, if you will, with my right elbow, even when I am quilting on the domestic. So y'all have seen me on the long arm, and I really do drive the long arm exclusively with my right hand. But even quilting on the domestic, my right arm is doing most of the heavy lifting and my left hand is here for support, right? Like I'm driving with my right, I'm getting like visual feedback with my left is much more what's going on in my brain when I'm quilting even on the domestic, right? So I use this elbow more, and it's this joint, like I can get, because see when you've got your arm is at this right angle, right? And you're quilting here, the movement is much more in line with how the joint is meant to move, right? Because our elbows bend you know, like this, right? So you're much more in line with how that joint is meant to move. If you're twisting, so when you have dinosaur arms, there's more of a twist going on there, and you'll feel the tension along the outside of your elbow because you're bending, but you're also like doing this circular motion, right? So instead of using just that straight hinge of your arm, you're forcing it to torque, right? So you're gonna be at a little bit more of a risk for hurting your elbows. But that being said, take it slow, work in shorter spurts, and just be really mindful of your elbows. If you have a good quality chiropractor that you see with any regularity, ask him or her to start adjusting your elbows. I get my elbows adjusted all the time. It's probably my least favorite adjustment, but it's worth it, right? Because I need this joint to be doing its job. Really do take seriously things like deep blue, ice, things you can do to reduce any inflammation that's going on in there after encouraging that joint to kind of work a little funky, right? You don't want to end up with any kind of strain or, heaven forbid, dislocation. I don't think you're at a high risk of dislocating your elbow quilting, right? But listen to your body, take frequent breaks, stay extra hydrated. Hydration is really important for the movement of your joints. And things like deep blue to recover. Also vitamin C. This just totally turned into my like quilting wellness recommendations. But vitamin C is really wonderful for the soft tissues in your body. So, you know, making sure you're eating extra oranges, extra strawberries, extra bell peppers to support all the soft tissue that's going on in there. Now this goes for even if you've got your quilt at an ideal height to your body, but especially if you're quilting under less than ideal circumstances, there's other things you can do to provide your body with additional support, right? Rest, stretching, post-workout rub, treatments for reducing inflammation, proper diet, etc. Is that helpful? I hope. Koala chair goes, yes, and I don't know if y'all have seen the like saddle chairs, which is totally on my dream wish list, but not only does it force you to sit forward, but it has a greater range of heights as well. You literally don't have a backrest with that, right? Now, also, sidebar with the nutrition information, please remember, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm sharing things that I have learned and that I do, right? This is just friend-to-friend recommendations. Do please talk to your doctor if you have any concerns, especially if you start experiencing any kind of pain or discomfort, right? And I particularly recommend finding a high-quality, sports-focused chiropractor. I know that sounds crazy with quilting, right? That's one of the things that I love about my chiropractor is he's really focused on sports, and so he really cares about my body being able to move and perform, whether that's on a football field or behind a quilting machine, right? Yes, ask your chiropractor about elbows. I highly encourage you to do that. All right, let me travel in the ditch over here and figure out where I need to start and turn. I want you guys to see a big turn while we're here together before we wrap up for the evening, okay? I don't even know what time it is, y'all. Okay. So I'm leaving this star unquilted because I'm sure I made a decision at some point about how I was going to quilt it, but I don't remember what that decision was. So I'm going to come back and quilt it later, and I'm going to continue with the granny squares over here, okay? Now, my needle, yep, I get fingers, toes, ankles, knees, elbows, shoulder blades, shoulders, clavicle, this bone here, I kid you not, because there's joints on it. Of course, spine and neck, tailbone, pelvis. He adjusts the bones in my head. Like literally, because you know, you've got suture joints on your head. I get those adjusted every time I go. I literally get everything adjusted. It's ridiculous. But you know what? I feel like a superhero after I go to the chiropractor. Holla to Dr. Mario over at Health Link Family Chiropractic. I feel like I should actually give him a proper shout out, right? Okay, so I'm turning a corner. This is a major maneuver on your quilt, right? Needle down, needle down, needle down, needle down. If you have the Juki J150 and you have not figured out how to have your needle stop in the needle down position, or really any Juki, because I think the minis are pretty similar, there are a couple of little step out images on my Juki J150 review, because it took me a while to figure this out and it made me freaking insane, okay? You always want your needle stopping in the needle down position when you're quilting so that you can do this. Raise your pressure foot and pivot. Right now, if I had much smaller throat space, right, I'm gonna be push and shove, everyone, push and shove, okay? Which I totally just like caught my thread in that. Okay, so I have now pivoted. There is a lot more quilt in my lap now. than there was a hot second ago, okay? And notice how it's coming at an angle. Can y'all see that? Here's the corner, and it's at an angle. I don't want this quilt to be square hanging off this table, because then all of this is down on the floor, and it is being pulled towards the earth at 9.8 meters per second squared, aka the force of gravity. And I don't have time to fight that. My poor elbows aren't up for it, right? So I'm gonna pivot this quilt so that it's literally at an angle. This is what I was talking about, where you can get creative about where you put a lot of this bulk, right? Because all that matters is that, you know, the 6 inches under my needle are flat, right? I don't actually care what's going on with the rest of this. Okay, that was one of the biggest mental hurdles for me to get over as I began to navigate quilting larger machines on the domestic, is I wanted all of this to be pretty, and that's not useful at all. I only need this 6 to 8 inches to be flat and squared up. Okay, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be squared up, because you can quilt at any old angle, right? This is free motion, that's the whole point. Okay, so get that bulk up on the table, bunch it up, squish it up, shove it under your machine, put as much of it back there as possible, so I have the minimum amount in my lap and the minimum amount under my throat space at any given time. And the rest of this is just hanging, and it doesn't have to look good. Now, I'm, of course, flattening this out a little bit extra. 1, I have the luxury of the space, but 2, I want you to be able to see what I'm doing, right? If I only had a little bit of table back there, and I quilted quite a good bit at our last place, where my machine was basically up against the wall, and so the quilt just had to pile up back there. That's totally fine, as long as it's not messing with the 6 inches that your hands are controlling, okay? You're sitting in a quilt club, that's right. Fluff it up, fluff it up. All right, now give me a hot second, because I gotta get my bearings on this puppy. Okay. Now notice as I start there, you may not have caught it. It was a subtle, I did a quick little posture adjustment as I started moving. Now already, do you see this? There's tension on this elbow because I'm allowing that hand to drag over there too far. I need to pause and readjust. Now, also think, this is another thing that I haven't really talked about. I know some people do that, Deborah. I honestly think that it's more trouble than it's worth. I really do. Stick a chair or a table or something back there. But the thought of having to clip and unclip, imagine if I'd had all this clipped up and I needed to turn that corner, I would have had to unclip the whole thing, pivot it, clip it back up. Like, I'm sorry, but that sounds really terrifying. I know some people who love them. And if you have one of those systems and you love it, that's awesome, because you're allowed to do things completely differently from how I do them, right? I'm just sharing my opinion, because that's the only thing I'm an expert at, is my opinion, right? And what works for me, all right? So think about your foot pedal too. I have a tendency, now I don't have this problem with this machine because it's a fixed pedal, but I'm gonna stand up so y'all can see this. With my last machine, where the foot pedal, you know, would run away, I would have a tendency to have my leg like way out there somewhere chasing my foot pedal. So then I'm sitting like this, right? Because I've got my leg like sticking out trying to find the foot pedal, and I'm trying to control the quilt, and it just turns into this nonsense. That's also super bad for your legs and joints, right? So keep that pedal up underneath you. Remember that your knee is what's doing that work down there, your knees and your ankles. Give it a break every once in a while, right? Like pause and stretch that puppy out, get up and move around, maybe do an insane dance like the one that I just did, right? But remember that, and remember that sitting at this right angle, while it is ideal for what we're doing, over time, you're gonna have less blood flow going down into your legs as a result. So you do need to stand up periodically and move around, okay? Yes, I love extra tables personally. I'm a table person. I just want tables to pile things on, okay? All right, so subtle posture adjustments. And we are off. Now, if you've never done continuous curves, or you've never done free motion quilting, I don't teach continuous curves in my free motion quilting class, or my intro to free motion quilting class, but it would be a pretty good place to start, right? Because it's real gentle, It's basically dot to dot quilting, right? Like you're going from point to point, and you could make yourself some like 9 patches or some granny squares and just quilt along point to point. Practice getting those curves nice and smooth, all right? Oh my gosh, Dana Lou, this romper is like my favorite thing in the whole wide world. All right, sidebar fashion moment. Okay, so it's all one piece, right? And it has pockets. It is literally the best thing ever. And I got it on sale, which makes it even better. Sorry, I was so pumped because I've been wanting a romper for a long time, and it's hard to find rompers that are flattering, guys. If you've ever tried on a romper, you know what I mean. Best tip to fellow rockstars is to relax. Yes, and if you're a wine drinking person, having a glass of wine when you're getting started with your free motion quilting is always a good idea, right? Just 1. 2 will make you just a little bit too adorable to function, right? Like, I mean, okay, for me, right? Like I'm 5'6" and don't weigh that much. If you are much taller, then maybe 2 would be fine. But for me, 1 glass of wine is just enough to relax and not feel so nervous about what I'm doing, okay? And if you're not a wine drinking person, then make your favorite tea, right? Something that's soothing. I always diffuse when I'm quilting. Right now my favorite to diffuse is rosemary and wild orange, which are wonderful oils for focus and creativity. There I am doing it again. You guys can see this is my bad habit, is that arm right there. Okay? So again, there's a lot beyond the direct quilting that can affect what's going on with your quilting, okay? Now notice, when I hit a groove like this, I've been talking too much to hit much of a groove, right? But here I'm in a bit of a groove. Notice that my speed is very even, right? Now there's not a stitch regulator on this machine. It is pedal controlled, right? But I'm moving along at a really even pace. That's going to help stitch length, of course, but it's also just going to help my hand-eye coordination, right? To hit a nice sweet spot. Oh, that bump of a seam was not my friend. All right, my shoulders are creeping up. And I'm going to break my groove because I need to relax my shoulders, right? Shake it out a little bit. All right? It's so quiet. It's so quiet, and especially for being so fast, like I'm like not even going at half speed right now to what this machine is capable of, but it's amazing. It's amazing. Now, a couple other thoughts, and then I'm gonna wrap us up because I've talked y'all's ears off, okay? Speaking of speed, if you have a speed controller on your machine, consider slowing it down a little bit. I tend to be a bit of a like pedal to the floor person, and so I will manually throttle myself here so that I don't have to think about my foot. I think I bumped the trash can. Sorry, there just was like suddenly a rustling and it was nerve-wracking. That way I don't have to worry about my foot as much, right? So if I just want to be pedal to the floor, I can be pedal to the floor. Also, when you're done, please make sure you get up and stretch, right? We've been sitting. Get up and stretch your body, go side to side, right? Bend over and touch your toes. Oh gosh, that feels really good. Hang on, guys. Y'all are gonna have to look at my booty for a second. Ugh. Right, move your legs around, stretch those hip flexors. I included several links in today's blog post to posts we've done recently about stretching and yoga and posture to encourage you to go back and review those, right? This right here that I'm just like at my table, I just kicked my chair to one side and I'm stretching out a little bit. You can do this as you are quilting, right? Like get up every 30, 45, 60 minutes and do this. Drink water. I'm setting a bad example because I'm currently drinking coffee. Yes, I'm aware that it's 9 o'clock at night. I have toddlers, okay? Stretch down the back of your legs, move around, and I would recommend when you're taking these breaks, go walk a bit. And when you're totally done, stretch out a little bit, head to toe stretching. I really recommend like at least 10 minutes. Really cool your body down. Remember, we're treating this like a sport, right? That we've carried that analogy all through the evening, and I really want you to think about that, all right? Because just like in sports, your body is the most important factor here, okay? So paying attention to your posture throughout, making sure that even dietary choices that you're making outside of your quilting time, things like having enough vitamin C to help take care of your joints, right? Like, take care of your most important asset with your quilting. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Cool down at the end, and if you can, and this is one of those things that I aspire to as well, so please don't think that I do this perfectly with my own quilting, especially when it's nighttime like this. But if you can, you reach the end of a quilting session, maybe it's been 30 minutes, maybe it's been 3 hours. Actually go get outside, right? Like you've spent a lot of time looking down, even minding your posture, you've spent a lot of time looking down, and you've spent some time restricting the circulation to your legs. Not in a super bad way, but remember, sitting is the new smoking, right? And we are still sitting, even though we're sitting mindfully, right? Go walk around your block, walk out and check the mail, go up and down your street a couple of times, right? Look up at the sky, really open up those shoulders again. Breathe real deep, and by walking, you're gonna restore really good circulation down to your legs, right? So what you don't wanna do is sit here and quilt for 3 hours and then go binge watch. And then you've just sat for hours on end. That's really bad for your legs, okay? And it's not so great for the rest of you either. But by walking, you're really gonna get that circulation moving again throughout your body. And after you've done a workout, that circulation is important for helping your body to recover, right? That's how you're gonna flush out everything through your lymphatic system, that when you exercise, right, acids build up in our muscles. I'm legit serious about this, guys. I know this sounds like, HollyAnne, I'm just quilting, I'm not playing soccer. But this is happening even on a smaller scale in your body, right? And it still matters to think about it this way, right? Acids have built up in your muscles. You need to drink water and move the blood in order to move all of that out of your system, okay? That's gonna help prevent soreness and stiffness the next day or even later the same day from your quilting, especially if you're working with a smaller throat space, which many, many, many of you are, and I did for a very long time, right? I understand that this is a huge luxury, okay? And I wanna give you guys tools to work with that smaller throat space and take care of your body so you can be successful. I don't want quilting to be something that you love it in the moment, but you're in so much pain the next day that you're scared to do it again, okay? And properly preparing your body, taking care of your body while you're quilting and cooling down is gonna help with that, all right? Okie dokie. Whew. There's my like big soapbox on self-care and quilting. It's an angle we don't think about a lot, but it matters. All right, now let me look at my calendar. Oh, I do know what we're doing next week. Next week, we're gonna be doing some ruler work in the borders of this baby. I know you guys have been curious about how this machine can handle ruler work. Yes, I will make sure that y'all can actually see up under the stitches. Hopefully we'll have some time for a close-up quilting session here in the next week or so. I've gotta have this puppy done in the next 9 days, so we know what I will be spending my time on as we're going along here. In the meanwhile, do make sure that you've popped over to the blog and read today's article. There's lots and lots of links from that post to other things we've talked about recently, especially around this self-care. If you're interested in any of the oils that I've mentioned, or you've just become more interested in wellness overall than you were previously, I would love to hear from you. You can contact me through my website or email me at stringandstory@gmail.com. I'd love to just get in a dialogue and know what would be the best fit for you and how I can help you begin to understand how self-care and quilting intersect, and how I can help you grow in both of those areas of your life, okay? Make sure that you check out the summer stash busting post if you've not already registered to be doing the finish along with us. I would love it if you would. To be eligible for prizes, you need to be registered, and by registering, you get 4 commemorative quilt labels that I'll be mailing out in a few weeks. It's a great little incentive and little loving kick in the booty to get you to finish some things up over the next 8 weeks. I'm finishing 4 separate quilts, and I'm hoping I did not bite off more than I can chew. But you know what? If I or any of y'all find as we are going along that you've bit off more than you can chew, we're going to cheer for you through that. And there's love and grace for that, right? I do not expect perfect attendance from everybody. Life may happen, right? I'm all for life happening, and we're here to do life together. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. Do make sure you've answered the question of the week to be eligible for this week's giveaway, a copy of my Perfect Fit pattern. And I will see all of you tomorrow night inside the Quilting Rockstars Facebook group for our regular social hour. Mwah!